wanted to show you what the raw file looked like, and that's this bit of orange mud here. The lines are all over the place. So after I did some corrections on the lines of the picture and a bit of color grading, we're going to take this over to Photoshop and snap art. All right, so first thing to do is plan this, and we're going to set it up like a traditional painting. So I'll leave the background alone, and I'm going to call this painting, paint, and we're going to need underpaint and medium range, fine, and then a glaze. So underpainting. These are medium detail level. And I actually end up using a lot more layers than this, but for the sake of this demonstration, we are going to keep it somewhat simple. So we're going to take underpainting into snap art. And I'm sorry, my computer is just not that fast. All right, so I've already got some presets here. No, I don't like that one very much. Let's see. We'll go with Impasto Rough, I think. Yep. And a couple things we're going to do. Check that 101. One thing I do not like is the canvas in here. So, you know what, let's start with one of the standard presets. Anyone can do those. Okay, so let's grab probably Vignette. That makes it look like this. A little too busy. First thing we're going to do is get rid of the canvas. We can add a canvas later, and if you're having this printed on canvas, you don't want to add a canvas texture and have a competing fake texture and a real texture. So, you know, I'm going to play with the angle of this a little. I usually like around 55. So you get some highlights, but not too many. And this is actually what I would consider a medium level of detail, not a rough. So we're going to save this, create a new preset, and we're going to hit new and make your own folder for this. So you're going to make about 5, let's see, no, sorry, this is, this level will be Impasto medium, Impasto basic set. And we're going to call this one medium. All right, and then we're going to need, oh, we have too much photorealism there. But it doesn't look terrible. I really dislike the photorealism in here. It just tends to look fake. Yeah, let's get something a little more messy. Okay, so we are just going to save over that, and the way you do that is you just use the same name. Okay, and then we're going to make a bigger, messier version of that. And there aren't enough brush presets in here. And when you use them at large sizes, they tend to start looking plasticky, which is really unfortunate. Because Otherwise, they'd be like perfect. Oh. Yeah. A little more color variation. Now, you're not going to see a ton of this layer at the end. You'll see a bit of it. I like super curvy strokes, a lot of texture, a lot of messy passion to this. Just hit random seed a couple times, see what we like. Pretty good. And one thing I'm noticing is that the highlight size is just too big. And ideally, you want this to match on all your paint levels, but all right, so this is our rough layer, our underpainting, and then we also will need a detail layer with a very small brush. Let's tone down the color variation on the detail layer. You want this to be pretty true. You do want to keep the paint thickness up there. Okay, I think we're good, so we'll save that as fine. We're going to go back to medium, and we're going to skip over to watercolor. And go to dry brush. These coverage issues, I really don't like the little white dots showing up all over the place. It just should not happen. All right, but it is what it is. Too much contrast. All right, so this is going to be a glazing layer. Glaze. Might take a look at pastels for kind of a scumble layer. Let's see. Go back to the rough settings, and then we'll switch over to pastels. Hard pastel. No, we want oil pastels. Maybe. Yeah, I'm not getting what I want, so we'll just go ahead and skip that. And we're going to go back to our rough layer and hit apply. As I said, my computer's not the fastest. This will take a minute to do all the setup. Staring at pictures of food makes me hungry. My goodness, these LARPs I photograph, people bring the tastiest snacks. Oh, sorry. It actually is showing up. All right, so now we'll get the medium level, filter, exposure, snap art. And you can save this all as an action. You just have to make sure that you have all your presets already made, and snap art is outputting to the layer you're working on, not creating a new layer. If it's creating a new layer, for whatever reason, the actions don't work. I'm sorry I'm not more energetic right now. It has been a long day. My son had multiple friends over. It's almost 2 a.m. and this is the first time today I've had any quiet. Boy, you know, working from home, as much as I'm working at all right now, you know, I'm an event photographer. I have barely had, I think I've had 3 gigs in the last 12 months. Well, I've gotten a lot better at digital painting and photo editing. Okay, so we are just about set up then. Need a brushwork layer on top, and then there's going to be one beyond that. So the first thing we do is put layer masks on the top of the layers. Yeah. All right, and then we're going to invert them. Control-I. Just make the layer masks black. Get rid of the glaze. We don't need it right away. And one of the first things I do before I go farther is, let's see, I'll use the basic brushes. I really like brushes, so I have a lot of them. Okay, so I'll take a look at the bottom layer and see if there's anything I just don't really like in it. Because one of the problems with this is that all the brush strokes end in squares. You know, these fake brushes aren't totally real. I'm just taking a blender brush, using Kyle's Impressionist with Blender 1 from the Photoshop defaults, and softening out some of the faker looking stuff. And this doesn't totally lose the texture, but it moves it around a little, which I think is the way to do it. Okay, and then we go to the medium level and get on the layer mask. You are not painting on the layer, you are painting on the layer mask. And let's grab the real oils. This is technically a mixer brush, but as long as you're painting on the layer mask, it doesn't make that big a difference. We'll just kind of. Oh, and the other thing is, I like to keep my flow down around, 30 to 50% most of the time, depending on the brush. And you just start stumbling in where you want more detail. I need to get the candlestick back. Define the candles a little better, get their glow back, and soft. Some of these cheeses and some of these mugs. Now, I do want to make sure I leave some of this original texture. I don't want to totally get rid of it. I just want to be able to recognize what the focus objects are. Don't want it to be so artificial looking. I want to mix different sizes of brushes so it doesn't look fake. Where to find the brush. And I don't want to use this everywhere, as I was saying. I want a little here, a little there. I don't want to define the background too much. Because the point is to have something that looks like an impressionist painting. For me, you know. You can pick whatever style you want to imitate. It certainly does not have to be impressionism. That's just what I like, and it's very hard to do with other software. So, smaller brush again. All right, now I'm on the fine detail layer, and I'm going to define the rims of these poles a little bit, and some of this fruit. And you want to follow the edges of things. Follow the curves, follow the edges. Give just enough detail for people to recognize what they're looking at. And no more. Now, because you're working on the layer mask, you can easily come back in and take detail out. And that's actually more or less the next step. When you say, oh, oops, I did a little too much, and you take some out. You want to follow the curves, and yeah, okay, I used a brush. I used too big a brush there, so I'm going to undo a little, and move my brush down a lot, size. I don't want to totally define both sides of this. I want one side in, just enough to bring it out of the background. Here, you know, defining edges, but not every edge. And that's what's going to separate this from purely digital art and make this look like handmade art. It's the personal decisions about how much detail you need in what locations. Because filters don't make good decisions on that, basically. Okay, looking pretty good. Toss on glaze, and that looks awful. But that is not how I use glazes. I go to linear light and fill, because the opacity is defined on linear light by fill, not opacity for whatever reason. And I think we're probably just going to go with 1%, and I'll show you the difference there. So it just makes it richer. It darkens the darks, it makes all the colors richer, and makes it look like a varnished painting, basically. You know, I did this backwards. Let's add some manual brushwork first. Okay, so I'm using an oil paint. What are these called? Mixer brush. And this is not my pick for what I prefer to use, actually. Actually, let's go with the Pastel Palooza one. Just a little simpler. All right, and you want to zoom in when you get to this section. And just start grabbing grabbing colors and extending them around a little. Now, use the colors that are already there. And see this, this nice scumbly look? Now, a problem with snap art is that the ends of the paint tend to be very square. That's not realistic. So one of the things we're doing is just getting rid of the things that a painter wouldn't do. And adding a little more realism, a little handmade touch to all this. You can see how plasticky this texture looks even as it is. And so just adding a little bit of hand-done brush strokes and something scumbled, something kind of messy, that's got more texture than this plasticky quality. It does a lot. Much bigger, and turn our flow way down. Add a little in. A lot of times you want to just grab kind of a medium color somewhere and scratch around with it. When you're painting with real paints, this is a major difference between digital paints, digital art, and classic art. You usually don't use very many colors. You typically have, maybe 6 to 8 colors on your palette tops. And some of the best art advice I ever got was to not use more than 3 or 4 colors at a time. And that's pretty good advice. Limit your palette. Helps. And simplifying your palette in digital paintings. A couple tools I'll show you with that. Also does a lot to make them look more real. I'm going to turn this way down, and background color here, and just kind of scumble in around here a little bit, picking up more or less the color of where I'm working, and just interrupt the plasticky paintbrush marks. I really hope the next version of this program gives more brush options, especially ones relating to the size that you're working at. Because this brush is fine at lower resolutions, but when you get up to these higher ones, yeah. Alright, and then we're going to hop over to the blender brush again and go with Kyle's Impressionist Blender. Got a bit bigger. Turn the strength down to 19%. Ooh, still too high. strength down to 4%. Oh, I swear I was just using this. So don't hit all your brush strokes. Hit kind of the edges here and there. You can turn it to sample all layers if you want. It slows it down a lot, and this is not a fast brush. Too much. Yeah, it's still too much. Okay, so I think we're pretty. Oh, one other thing we can do with the brushwork is stick a bit of embossing on it. Let's see. Okay, so you can see how that popped up. And that's a little too much. Texture. Okay, so I'm going to hop into legacy patterns. What canvas looks like on that. Honestly, can't really see it, but oh, there's a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so we'll just add a little canvas texture to that, and a little bevel and emboss, and pulls it up a little bit, but not a lot. Okay, so glaze, and then Alt Shift Control E, make a new layer and apply image. And then we're going to go do a little bit of color toning in Camera Raw filter. And this is where you really pull your textures out and simplify your colors a little bit. And, works pretty nicely. I'm honestly quite happy with the color grading. I do need a bit of clarity, and dehaze will really make it look like you've got a more limited color palette. I don't know why, but they do. I guess dehaze simplifies colors. You got to be careful adding texture. Don't add more than 10, or it will like be all little white dots. In my experience. Let's see. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. You can also add like a LUT on top of this. Let's see. Okay, I've got these Renaissance ones. I got them off Envato Elements. This is way too much, but it does help with controlling the colors. So I think right about there. Yeah, I often like between 20 and 40% on these historic tone, what are they called, creative presets for Lightroom and Camera Raw. So that one's Baroque 01S. And a little more texture. Okay. And there you go. That doesn't look like it came right out of a filter, because it didn't. It came out of a filter multiple times and then had a bunch of handwork done on top of it. But pretty fast. And this looks really nice on portraits. You can save all the setup as an action and then just do the manual painting part. And I highly recommend that. I can do most of these pictures in about half an hour now. So, enjoy the technique. Have a good night. Bye.